while his mistress kissed his neck right there at the dinner table. His mother clapped and said, "Finally, 5 years of dead weight gone." His sister filmed the whole thing, laughing, zooming in on his wife's face, waiting for her to break. Then they dragged her bags outside, threw them into the pouring rain, and popped a bottle of champagne while she stood on the curb, soaking wet, holding nothing but 2 garbage bags and a silver locket her dying grandmother gave her 10 years ago. They posted the video online with the caption, "Trash Day came early." 50,000 people watched it by morning. They called her worthless. They said she brought nothing to the marriage. They said she was nobody from nowhere. But inside that locket was a phone number she had never dialed, not once in 10 years. That night, standing in the rain with nothing left to lose, she finally called it. 30 minutes later, a black Rolls-Royce turned onto that quiet suburban street, then another, a convoy of luxury vehicles lined up along the curb, like a silent army arriving for war. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that cost more than Jacari made in a year. He walked through the rain like it wasn't even there, took her hand, and said 5 words that made Jacari's knees buckle. "Let's go home, baby girl." That man was her father, a billionaire, one of the wealthiest men in America, and Jacari had just thrown his daughter into the rain. But here's the part they didn't see coming. She told her father no. She didn't want his money. She didn't want his power. She wanted to fight her own war. And what she uncovered about Jacari, his mistress, and even his own mother, was more devastating than anything money could buy. This is not just a story about karma. This is a story about a woman who lost everything and proved that her worth was never tied to a man, a name, or a bank account. It is a story about what happens when you stop waiting for someone to see your value and start fighting for it yourself. If you have ever been underestimated, overlooked, or made to feel like you were not enough, this story is for you. Stay until the end. It will change the way you see yourself. Like this video if you believe in second chances. Subscribe if you want more stories that remind you who you really are. Hit that notification bell so you never miss one. And share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Because sometimes a story finds you exactly when you need it most. Now let me take you back to the beginning. Nia Carter stood in a courtroom wearing a dress she bought at a thrift store for $11. No jewelry, no makeup. Her hands were folded in front of her, steady as stone, even though everything inside her was shaking. Across the aisle sat Jacari Jennings, her soon-to-be ex-husband, in a designer suit that cost more than her monthly rent. Simone Avery sat beside him, legs crossed, lips glossed, looking at Nia the way you look at something stuck to the bottom of your shoe. And behind them, like a general surveying the battlefield, sat Lorraine Jennings, Jacari's mother, with a smile so sharp it could cut glass. They thought they had already won. Jacari's lawyer stood up and made the demand with a straight face. $150,000 in damages. He claimed Nia had deliberately sabotaged her husband's business, undermined his reputation, and caused irreparable financial harm through emotional manipulation. The courtroom murmured. A few people shook their heads. One woman in the gallery whispered to her friend, "That poor girl." Nia didn't flinch. She had learned a long time ago that flinching only made cruel people crueler. Then her phone buzzed, just once, a single text message. She looked down at the screen. Read it. And for the first time in 2 years of absolute hell, Nia Carter smiled. Not a sad smile. Not a polite smile. A real one. The kind that starts somewhere deep in your chest and rises up like a sunrise. Jacari saw it, and for the first time, Something flickered behind his eyes that looked a lot like fear. They spent 2 years trying to destroy this woman. They took her home, her dignity, her reputation, her peace. They threw her belongings into the rain and popped champagne while she stood on the curb with nothing but 2 garbage bags and a silver locket. They dragged her name through the mud, fabricated evidence, turned her own community against her, and tried to crush her in court with a lawsuit built on lies. But they forgot one thing. You should always know exactly who you are dealing with before you declare war. This is the story of how Nia Carter lost everything and took back even more. But let me take you back to the beginning. Here is something most people learn too late. When someone shows you who they are the first time, believe them. Nia didn't. And that is where this whole thing started. She grew up in a town so small it didn't have a stoplight, just one main road, a church with a crooked steeple, a general store that sold everything from fishing bait to birthday candles, and rows of houses with wraparound porches where folks sat and told stories until the lightning bugs came out. The town sat in the middle of Georgia, in a pocket of red clay and pine trees, where everybody knew your name, your grandmother's name, and exactly what you brought to the church potluck last Sunday. It was the kind of place where time moved slow and love moved deep. Nia was raised by her grandmother, Miss Altha Carter. Miss Altha was a woman built from prayer, patience, and cornbread. She had hands that could braid hair, fix a leaky faucet, and hold a crying child all in the same afternoon. She didn't need much to be happy. A garden full of collard greens, a Bible with the pages worn soft, and her grandbaby sitting on the porch beside her. Nia's father, Vincent Monroe, left when she was 4 years old. Not because he didn't love her, but because he had a dream that was bigger than that little town could hold. He wanted to build something, an empire. He started with nothing, worked 3 jobs, slept 4 hours a night, and clawed his way up from red clay roads to glass towers until he became one of the wealthiest men in the country. Real estate, investments, developments, buildings with his name on them, in cities Nia had only seen in pictures, on the TV, at the general store. He sent money every month. An envelope with more than enough to take care of Nia and Miss Altha. He called when he could, his voice always warm, but far away, like a radio station you can only half tune in. And maybe that's what hurt the most. Not that he was gone, but that he was only halfway there. Miss Altha never spoke badly about Vincent, but she didn't sugarcoat it either. She would sit on the porch with young Nia, snapping green beans into a bowl, and say, "Your daddy is out there, chasing something he thinks he lost. But you, baby girl, you got everything you need right here." She would tap Nia's chest, right over her heart. "Don't you ever forget that." Nia carried those words like a second heartbeat. When she turned 16, Miss Altha gave her a silver locket. It was old, scratched up, with a tiny clasp that stuck sometimes. Inside was a faded photo of Vincent holding baby Nia, both of them smiling back when things were simpler. And on the other side, written in Miss Altha's shaky handwriting, was a phone number. "When the world tries to tell you what you're worth," Miss Altha said, pressing the locket into Nia's palm, "this will remind you." Nia wore that locket every single day from that moment on. Through high school, through college, through the years that followed. Even when Miss Altha passed away, quiet and peaceful on a Sunday morning, with the church bells ringing outside her window, Nia wore it. Even when she packed up that little house in that little town and moved to Atlanta to teach second grade at an elementary school in a neighborhood that reminded her of home, she wore it. But she never called the number. Because here's the thing about Nia that most people didn't understand. She didn't hide her father's identity out of humility or some noble desire. to be loved for who she was, although that was part of it. She hid it because she was angry, quietly, deeply angry. The money Vincent sent, the empire he built, all of it came at the cost of being there. Every school play he missed. Every birthday she blew out candles without him. Every night she fell asleep, wondering if her daddy thought about her the way she thought about him. She didn't want his money. She didn't want his world. She wanted to prove, to herself more than anyone, that she could build a life worth living without a single dollar that came from his absence. And she did. She became a teacher. A good one. The kind of teacher who stayed late to help kids with their reading, who bought school supplies with her own money, who remembered every student's birthday, and made them feel like they mattered. She didn't make much, but she made enough, and she was proud of that. Then she met Jakari Jennings. It was at a community fundraiser at the rec center downtown. Jakari was organizing free business workshops for young Black entrepreneurs. He stood at the front of the room with his sleeves rolled up, talking about generational wealth and economic empowerment, and his eyes were on fire with something Nia recognized immediately. Ambition, the same kind her father had, the kind that burns so bright it blinds you to everything else. But at the time, it just looked like passion. And passion, when it is aimed at something good, is hard to resist. They talked for 2 hours after the event. He asked about her work, really listened, nodded in all the right places. He told her about growing up in a rough part of the city, about his mother raising him and his sister alone, about how he swore he would make something of himself so his family would never struggle again. He seemed like a man with a mission. And Nia, who had spent her whole life watching a man with a mission walk away from her, thought maybe this time she could walk beside one instead. They dated for 2 years. He met her friends, went to her church, spent Sundays at her little apartment, eating her cooking and talking about the future. He was attentive, kind, present. But there were small things, red flags that didn't look red at the time. They looked pink. Almost harmless. He checked the bill twice at restaurants, then got embarrassed when she noticed. He talked about legacy and empire constantly, the same words her father used, and she told herself it was different this time. And when Nia mentioned her simple upbringing, Jakari would smile and say, "Don't worry, baby. I'm going to give you the life you deserve." It sounded like love, but looking back, Nia would realize it was a warning, because what he was really saying was that the life she had built for herself, the teaching, the little apartment, the quiet pride of doing it on her own, wasn't enough. Her best friend Denise Washington tried to tell her. Denise was a 45-year-old single mom who worked in school administration, had a laugh that could fill a stadium, and possessed the uncanny ability to see through nonsense the way some people see through glass. At the engagement party, Denise pulled Nia aside, holding a plate of finger sandwiches and wearing an expression that said she had opinions. "Girl, I ran a background check," Denise said. "He's clean, but his mama, that woman has a review from her own church saying she is, and I quote, spiritually aggressive. I am just saying." Nia laughed. "Denise, you cannot background check my future mother-in-law." "I can and I did, and I'll do it again. I've got alerts set up." But Nia married Jakari Jennings on a Saturday afternoon in April with flowers in her hair and hope in her chest. And for 1 year, it was beautiful. Then it wasn't. The cracks started in year 2, the way cracks always start. Quietly, almost invisible. The kind you don't notice until the whole wall comes down. Jakari's consulting firm lost 3 major clients in 2 months. One went bankrupt, one got poached by a bigger company, One just stopped returning calls. The pressure built fast, and Jakari didn't know how to carry it without letting it spill onto everyone around him. He stopped sleeping through the night, started drinking bourbon after dinner, then before dinner, then instead of dinner. He became irritable, snapping at Nia over things that didn't matter. The dishes were in the wrong place. The TV was too loud. She asked too many questions. She didn't ask enough. Nia tried everything. She made spreadsheets tracking his business expenses, suggesting places to cut costs. She offered to tutor kids on the side for extra income. She stayed up late researching small business grants and emailed him links with little notes that said, "Thought this might help." He rejected all of it. One night, after she showed him a grant application she had filled out on his behalf, he looked at her across the kitchen table and said the words that drew first blood. "I don't need a school teacher telling me how to run a business." That line, 7 words. Nia felt each one land like a stone dropped into still water. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it, swallowed it, moved on. That was her first mistake. Not because she should have fought back with anger, but because she should have recognized the sound of a door closing. When someone tells you that what you do, what you are, is beneath them, that is not frustration talking. That is the truth leaking out. But Nia loved him, and love, when it's real, makes you patient in ways that sometimes work against you. Lorraine Jennings made everything worse. She started visiting every week, sometimes twice, always unannounced, always walking through Nia's home like she held the deed. Lorraine was 61, a church elder at Greater Hope Baptist, and she carried herself with the authority of a woman who believed God had personally endorsed her opinions. Every visit was a surgical strike wrapped in a smile. "Nia, honey, why don't you get your hair done? You are representing this family now." When I was married to Jakari's father, rest his soul, I made sure he never had to worry about a single thing at home. That is what a wife does. Have you thought about getting a real career? Teaching is sweet, but it does not exactly open doors, does it? Nia, what are you bringing to the table? Seriously, what are you contributing? Nia handled it with grace. She tried to bond with Lorraine, cooked her favorite meals, remembered her birthday, sent handwritten cards. Lorraine took it all and gave nothing back except more criticism, more judgment, more of that tight-lipped smile that said, "You are not good enough, and you never will be." Then Simone Avery arrived, and everything accelerated. Jakari met her at a networking event downtown. She was a business consultant, she said, tall, polished, the kind of woman who walked into a room and rearranged the gravity. She had connections, she told Jakari, important people, the kind of people who could save his company and put him on the map. The first time Simone came to the house for a so-called business dinner, Nia cooked for 3 hours, made braised short ribs, roasted vegetables, homemade rolls. She set the table with the nice plates and lit candles. Simone walked in, looked at the food, looked at the house, and then looked at Jakari like he was the only thing in the room worth seeing. She complimented his suit, his vision, his ambition. She asked about their plan for growth. She laughed at his jokes like they were the funniest things she had ever heard. She never once complimented the food, never once looked at Nia for more than 2 seconds, and when she touched Jakari's arm during conversation, she let her hand linger just a beat too long. Nia noticed everything. That night in bed, she said it plainly. "I don't trust her, Jakari." He didn't even look up from his phone. "You don't trust anybody who's trying to help me. Maybe that's the problem." "That is not fair. I've done nothing but try to help you." "Then try harder. Or better yet, Just let me handle my business. The next day, Nia called Denise from her classroom during lunch break. She told her about Simone, about the arm touching, about the way Jakari shut her down. Denise was quiet for exactly 3 seconds, which was a record. So, let me get this straight, Denise said slowly. A woman who looks like she walked off a magazine cover suddenly wants to save your husband's little consulting firm out of the goodness of her heart, free of charge. No ulterior motive, just pure business generosity. She says she has connections. Baby, I have a bridge in Brooklyn I would like to sell you. It's got a great view. But Nia stayed. Not because she was naive, although maybe she was. She stayed because she made vows, because she believed in fighting for her marriage, because somewhere in the back of her mind, she kept thinking about her father, about how he left when things got hard, about how she swore she would never be like him. There's a difference between fighting for your marriage and fighting against yourself. When you start losing pieces of who you are just to keep the peace, that is not loyalty. That is not strength. That is self-destruction, wearing a wedding ring. And no vow on earth requires you to destroy yourself to honor it. But Nia hadn't learned that lesson yet. She was about to. Simone played the long game. She was not impulsive. She was strategic, surgical. She didn't just want Jakari, she wanted Nia gone, and she knew exactly how to make it happen. First, she got Lorraine on her side. She offered to get Lorraine's nephew a job at a company she had connections with. Lorraine, who valued status above everything, was immediately sold. Suddenly, Simone was the kind of woman Jakari needs around. Lorraine started inviting Simone to family dinners that Nia wasn't told about until after they happened. Second, she recruited Candace, Jakari's 26-year-old sister. Candace was social media obsessed, insecure, and desperate for validation. Simone took her shopping, got her followers on Instagram by featuring her on her page. Told her she was going to be famous. Candace became Simone's loyal soldier, ready to do whatever was asked. Third, and this was the cruelest part, Simone planted doubt in Jakari's mind about Nia. She told him she had heard Nia talking to someone at the school about how Jakari's business was going to fail. A complete lie. But Jakari was already drowning in insecurity, already convinced the world was watching him lose, and the lie landed exactly where Simone wanted it to. Fourth, the fabricated evidence. Candace took photos of Nia at a parent-teacher conference, standing next to a male colleague. They were discussing reading scores. That's it. But Simone had the photos cropped, filtered, angled to look intimate. She sent them to Jakari with a note that said, "I'm so sorry. I thought you should know." Jakari didn't ask questions. He didn't give Nia a chance to explain. He came home, threw the photos on the kitchen table, and screamed, called her a liar, a cheater, a fake. "I gave you everything," he shouted, "and this is how you repay me?" Nia grabbed the school's event calendar, pulled up the sign and sheets on her phone, showed him proof that it was a professional event, that 30 other people were there, that the man in the photo was a 60-year-old married math teacher named Mr. Henderson. Jakari crumpled the papers. "You think I'm stupid? You think I don't see what's happening?" The irony was so thick, you could choke on it. He was the one with another woman on his lap. He was the one being played. But he was projecting everything onto Nia because it was easier to believe she was the villain than to look in the mirror. That night, Nia locked herself in the bathroom. She sat on the cold tile floor, her back against the door, and held her locket. She opened it, looked at the faded photo, looked at the phone number in Miss Altha's handwriting. Her thumb hovered over the phone screen. Then she closed the locket. "I'm not calling him. I don't need his money. I don't need his world. I just need my husband to see me." But her husband had already stopped looking. 5 years. That is how long Nia Carter held on. 5 years of trying to make love work when the other person had already quit. 5 years of cooking meals that went uneaten, of sleeping next to a man who faced the wall, of swallowing words she should have screamed. 5 years of watching Simone Avery slide into her life like water through a crack in the foundation, slow and steady and destructive. Their 5th wedding anniversary fell on a Saturday in April. Jakari told Nia he was taking her to dinner, a nice restaurant, just the two of them. Nia was cautiously hopeful. Maybe this was a turning point. Maybe he had realized what he was about to lose. She put on a dress she had been saving, navy blue with small white flowers, the kind of dress that made her feel like herself. She did her hair, put on the locket, and looked at herself in the mirror for a long time. "You deserve good things, Uitbazom," she whispered to her reflection. "Remember that." Jakari drove them to the restaurant without speaking. When they walked in, the hostess led them to a private table in the back. And that's when Nia's stomach dropped. Simone was already sitting at the table. Red dress, red lips, red nails. Sitting in the chair that should have been Nia's. And she wasn't alone. Lorraine sat to her left, dressed like she was going to a coronation. Candace sat across from them, phone out, camera ready. This wasn't dinner. This was an ambush. Jakari sat down next to Simone. He didn't look at Nia. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope, slid it across the table. "Sit down," he said, pointing to the only empty chair, the one facing all of them. Nia sat. She opened the envelope. Divorce papers. 23 pages. Already signed by Jakari. Already notarized. "It is over," he said, his voice flat, rehearsed, like he had practiced this in front of a mirror. "Sign them. My lawyer drew everything up. You get nothing. The house is in my name. You contributed nothing to this marriage, and I'm not rewarding you for 5 years of dead weight." Simone put her hand on Jakari's arm and smiled at Nia. "Don't take it personal, sweetie. Some women are just placeholders." Lorraine nodded. "It is for the best, Nia. You were never the right fit for this family." Candace angled her phone for a better shot. "This is content," she whispered to herself, grinning. The other diners were trying not to stare. A couple at the next table exchanged horrified glances. A waiter stood frozen by the kitchen door, unsure whether to intervene or disappear. Nia looked at the papers. She could feel the weight of their expectation pressing down on her. They wanted tears. They wanted begging. They wanted her to crumble right there at the table so they could toast over her broken pieces. But something had shifted inside Nia, not in that moment, but over the past 5 years. Layer by layer, humiliation by humiliation, something quiet and unbreakable had been building in the place where hope used to live. Not rage, not bitterness, something harder than both. Clarity. She picked up the divorce papers. All 23 pages. She read every single one, slowly, deliberately, turning each page with care, while the table grew more and more uncomfortable. Simone shifted in her seat. Lorraine started tapping her nails on the table. Jakari's jaw tightened. "Just sign them, Nia," he said through his teeth. Nia closed the papers, placed them in her purse. Then she looked at Jakari, and her voice was steady as bedrock. "I will sign them, but not here, not like this. You want a divorce? Fine. But you will do it properly. Through lawyers, through the court, through the process. I am not your entertainment tonight." She stood up, pushed in her chair, looked at each of them one at a time, Simone, Lorraine, Candace, and finally Jakari. "Enjoy your dinner," she said, and walked out. The restaurant was silent for a full 5 seconds after she left. Then Lorraine waved down the waiter and ordered a bottle of champagne, as if cruelty was something worth celebrating. Outside, Denise Washington was waiting in her car. She had insisted on being the getaway driver because, as she put it, "I don't trust that man to bring you home in one piece, emotionally or physically." Nia opened the passenger door, sat down, and closed it. For a moment, she just stared straight ahead, her hands in her lap, the divorce papers in her purse, the locket around her neck. "How did it go?" Denise asked carefully. Nia's face crumpled. The tears came all at once, hard and fast and 5 years overdue. She sobbed so hard her whole body shook, and Denise reached over and held her, one hand on her back, saying nothing, just being there. For 5 full minutes, neither of them spoke. Then Denise said softly, "Okay, now we fight." Jakari was furious that Nia didn't sign at the restaurant. He had scripted the whole scene in his head. She was supposed to cry, she was supposed to beg, she was supposed to make him feel powerful and justified and right. Instead, she had taken his papers, kept her composure, and walked out with more dignity than everyone else at that table combined. And dignity, in the hands of someone you are trying to destroy, is infuriating. He came home that night with reinforcements. Lorraine and Candace arrived within the hour, mobilized like soldiers who had been waiting for the order. Nia was in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, looking at the locket, when she heard the front door slam open and 3 sets of footsteps coming up the stairs. They didn't pack her things with care. They threw them into black garbage bags, the kind you use for yard waste, like her entire life could be crumpled up and tossed to the curb. Clothes, books, toiletries, framed photos, everything mixed together with the kind of carelessness that comes from people who have already decided you don't matter. Candace filmed the whole thing, narrating like a reality show host. And here we have the ex-wife's sad little closet. "Girl, is this from Target? I can't even." Lorraine held up a framed photo of Nia and Miss Altha on the porch of the old house in Georgia. She looked at it, then set it face down in the garbage bag. "Sentimental junk," she muttered. Jakari stood at the front door and pointed outside. It was raining, not a light drizzle. A full Georgia thunderstorm that had rolled in like it had been scheduled for maximum dramatic effect. "Get out," he said. "Now." Nia stood in the hallway with her purse and her locket and nothing else. She looked at each of them. Then she said something in a voice so calm it made the air in the room change temperature. "I want you to remember this moment, every single one of you, because there is going to come a day when you wish you could take it back, and I won't be there to let you." Lorraine laughed, loud and sharp. "Honey, the only thing I am going to remember is the day my son finally got free." Candace zoomed in on Nia's face. "Say hi to the internet," she whispered. They threw the garbage bags into the rain. One landed in a puddle. The other split open, spilling clothes across the wet driveway. A blouse Nia had worn on her first day teaching. A scarf Miss Altha had knitted. A pair of shoes she wore to her wedding rehearsal dinner, all of it soaking in the runoff. Nia walked out into the storm. She didn't run. She didn't beg. She walked with her back straight and her head up, and the rain hitting her like the whole sky was trying to wash away what just happened. Behind her, inside the warm, dry house, Jakari popped a bottle of champagne. The sound echoed into the street, then laughter, then the clink of glasses. The neighbors watched from their windows. Some recorded, some whispered. One woman across the street, Mrs. Dolores Thompson, who was 73 and had seen more than most, shook her head and said to her husband, "That boy just made the worst mistake of his life. Mark my words." Candace posted the video to every platform she had. The caption read, "Trash day came early." Within minutes it started spreading. Friends of friends, then strangers, then people who had no connection to any of them but felt entitled to an opinion. The comments came fast. Some people defended Nia, but the cruelest voices are always the loudest, and cruelty travels faster than kindness on the internet. By morning, the video had 50,000 views and climbing. Nia stood at the bus stop 4 blocks from the house, soaking wet, 2 garbage bags at her feet, one of them torn open. Her phone was at 8% battery. She called Denise. Voicemail. She called the school. Closed. She sat down on the metal bench. The rain hammered the roof of the bus shelter. She was cold in a way that had nothing to do with the weather. She opened the locket, looked at the faded photo of her father holding her as a baby, looked at the phone number. Her thumb trembled over the screen. "Not yet," she whispered. "Not yet." She closed the locket. That night, Nia Carter slept in a 24-hour laundromat on the east side of the city. She used her coat as a blanket and a garbage bag of her own belongings as a pillow. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A dryer tumbled in the corner with someone's forgotten load. And Nia stared at the ceiling and made herself a promise. "I will not stay here. I will not stay broken. And I will not let them be the end of my story." Rock bottom is a terrible place to visit, but here is something nobody tells you about it. Rock bottom is also where you find out what you are actually made of. Not what you hoped you were made of, not what you pretended to be, what you actually are when everything else has been stripped away. Nia Carter was about to find out. Denise Washington showed up at the laundromat at 6:15 the next morning with a thermos of coffee, a bag of breakfast sandwiches, and an expression that could only be described as weaponized maternal fury. "Get in the car," she said. Nia didn't argue. Denise took her home, which was a 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood that always smelled like cinnamon and laundry detergent. She gave Nia the guest room, clean towels, and very specific instructions. "You are going to shower. You are going to eat. You are going to sleep. And then we are going to figure out how to make that man regret the day he learned to talk." In that order. Nia showered for 45 minutes. When she came out, her eyes were swollen but clear. Something had shifted. The grief was still there, heavy as an anchor, but underneath it was something new, not anger exactly, focus. The next morning, Nia went to a legal aid office downtown. She couldn't afford a private attorney, but she could afford to show up. The intake coordinator listened to her story, nodding quietly, taking notes. Then she said, "I think I know someone who can help." That someone was Malcolm Reed, 38 years old, Howard Law graduate, sharp as a scalpel, and twice as precise. He worked at a mid-size firm, but took pro bono cases through the legal aid network. He specialized in family law with a focus on financial abuse and divorces, which is exactly what Nia's situation was. Malcolm met with Nia at a coffee shop because his office was being renovated. He spread papers across the table and listened to everything. The ambush dinner, the fabricated photos, the garbage bags in the rain. He didn't interrupt. He didn't react. He just listened and took notes in handwriting so neat it looked typed. When Nia finished, Malcolm looked up. "First," he said, "I'm sorry this happened to you. Second, your husband made several significant legal mistakes, and I don't think he knows it yet." He explained it in plain terms. Georgia is an equitable distribution state. That means in a divorce, marital property gets divided based on what's fair, not just whose name is on the paperwork. Nia had contributed to the mortgage with her teaching salary for 5 years. She had records, bank statements, pay stubs. She had rights to that house, whether Jakari liked it or not. But that wasn't the big discovery. The big discovery was this. Malcolm found that Jakari had taken out a business loan 8 months ago using the house as collateral. And on the loan application, there was a signature, Nia's signature, authorizing the house as an asset, except Nia never signed it. She stared at the document Malcolm slid across the table. "That is not my handwriting," she said quietly. "I have never seen this document in my life." Malcolm nodded. "I know, which means your husband or someone acting on his behalf forged your signature on a financial document. That is not just a divorce issue. That is criminal fraud." For the first time in weeks, Nia felt something that wasn't pain. It was possibility. Malcolm filed the divorce on Nia's terms. He also filed a motion to freeze the house from being sold and a formal fraud complaint about the forged loan. Everything was documented, time-stamped, and backed with evidence. Jakari got served at his office, in front of his employees, in front of Simone. A process server walked in during a team meeting, handed Jakari the papers, said, "You've been served," and walked out. Jakari's face went from confused to pale to furious in about 4 seconds. Simone leaned over to look at the papers, and her jaw tightened. That evening, Nia sat in Denise's living room with a glass of cheap wine, the first she had allowed herself. And for one brief shining moment, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she was going to be okay. Denise raised her glass. "To you, girl, we are going from garbage bags to Gucci." Nia laughed. "I don't need Gucci." "Okay, fine. Target. But the good section of Target. The one near the candles where everything smells like vanilla and financial stability." They clinked glasses, and Nia smiled. A real smile. But that night, while Nia slept peacefully, for the first time in months, Lorraine Jennings was making phone calls, because Lorraine had connections that Nia didn't know about, and Lorraine had secrets that nobody knew about. And a woman with connections and secrets is a very dangerous thing when she feels threatened. The counterattack came fast, and from a direction Nia never expected. 3 days after Malcolm filed the fraud complaint, it disappeared. Not denied, not rejected, just gone. Lost in the system, they said. A clerical error, they said. These things happen, they said. They didn't just happen. They were made to happen. Lorraine Jennings had been a church elder at Greater Hope Baptist for 22 years. In that time, she had accumulated something more valuable than money. She had accumulated favors. She knew people, lawyers, council members, administrators, and she knew Judge Patricia Harmon, who had been assigned to Jakari and Nia's divorce case. Judge Harmon owed Lorraine a favor from 7 years ago when Lorraine had helped get Harmon's daughter into a private school through church connections. It was the kind of quiet debt that never gets spoken about, but never gets forgotten. Nia's motion to freeze the house was denied on a technicality. The fraud complaint evaporated. And then Jakari's lawyer, newly energized and suspiciously well-prepared, filed a countersuit. The claim was breathtaking in its audacity. Jakari alleged that Nia had been emotionally abusive throughout their marriage, that she had deliberately undermined his business by discouraging clients, which was a complete fabrication, that she owed him $150,000 in damages for lost business opportunities caused by her alleged sabotage. Malcolm stared at the filing, like it was written in a language he couldn't believe anyone would speak out loud. "This is baseless," he said, "every word of it." But the judge assigned to the case is fast-tracking everything in Jakari's favor. Something is wrong here. Something was very wrong, but they didn't know how wrong yet, because Simone had been busy too. While Lorraine worked the legal system, Simone worked the court of public opinion. She created anonymous email accounts and contacted parents at Nia's school. The messages were carefully crafted, concerned in tone, but devastating in content. They included the edited photos of Nia with the male teacher at the parent conference, alongside fabricated text messages, messages Simone created herself, that suggested an inappropriate relationship. "Do you know what kind of woman is teaching your children?" the emails read. "Is this someone you trust with your kids?" The school had no choice but to respond. They launched an internal investigation, and while the investigation was pending, Nia was placed on administrative leave. No pay, no access to her classroom, no contact with students. Nia sat in the principal's office and listened to the words coming out of his mouth, but they sounded far away. Like someone speaking underwater, administrative leave, pending investigation. "We have to take these allegations seriously. We will be in touch." She walked out of the school building on a Wednesday morning, the same building where she had taught for 6 years, where she had stayed late to help kids with their reading, where she had taped student artwork to the walls and written encouraging notes in the margins of homework assignments. She walked out and didn't look back, because looking back would have broken her. Everything hit at once. In a single week, Nia lost her legal advantage when the judge sided with Jakari. She lost her income when the school suspended her. And then, as if the universe decided she hadn't suffered enough, Candace's video went nuclear. A gossip blog picked up the footage of Nia being thrown out. They ran it with the headline, "Wife Gets What She Deserves." And within 48 hours, Nia's name, her face, her school, everything was public. Comment sections exploded. Some people defended her, many didn't. Strangers who knew nothing about her life felt perfectly comfortable judging it. Then Simone delivered the kill shot. An audio recording surfaced online. It was Nia's voice, clear and unmistakable, laughing and saying, "I married him for the money. He is so stupid. I was going to take everything and leave." Except Nia never said those words, because the recording was AI generated. Simone had used samples of Nia's voice from Candace's videos to create a synthetic audio clip so convincing that even people who knew Nia had to listen twice. The recording went everywhere. The narrative crystallized overnight. Nia Carter wasn't a victim. She was a gold digger. She wasn't thrown out. She was exposed. She deserved everything she got. Denise called Nia that night. Her voice was tight with fury. "I just read the comments section on that blog," Denise said. "I need you to know something. I am deleting the internet. The whole thing. I am driving to Mark Zuckerberg's house right now and I am unplugging everything. The man has it coming." Nia almost smiled. Almost. She sat on Denise's couch that night, surrounded by the wreckage of her life. No money, no job, no legal hope. A $150,000 countersuit hanging over her head. Her reputation destroyed by a recording she never made. She was 32 years old, and she had nothing. Nothing except a best friend who would not leave, a silver locket with a phone number inside, and the quiet, stubborn refusal to die without fighting. She opened the locket. "I told myself I would never call this number. I told myself I didn't need anything from him, that I could handle this alone." She stared at the faded photo for a long time. "But I can't do this alone." She dialed. It rang once, twice, 3 times, and then a voice answered, deep, warm, familiar in a way that made her chest ache. "Baby girl, is that you?" Nia's voice cracked. "Daddy, I need your help." A pause. The kind of pause that holds everything. "But not your money," she said quickly. "I don't want your money. I need information. I need to know what I'm fighting." Vincent Monroe was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice had shifted from warm to something made of iron. "Tell me everything." Vincent Monroe wanted to end it in a single phone call. He had the power. He had the connections. He could have burned Jakari's entire world to ash before breakfast and been back on the golf course by noon. "Let me handle this," he said. "One call, that is all it takes." But Nia said no. "If you do it, they will say I couldn't fight my own battles, that I am just a rich man's daughter who went crying to Daddy. I need to do this myself, Dad, but I need to see the whole board. I need to know what I am actually up against." Vincent was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You sound just like your grandmother." "Good." Vincent provided one thing: a private investigator. Not to attack Jakari, not to intimidate anyone, just to gather facts. Everything legal, everything documented, everything that could stand up in a courtroom. The investigator's name was Carter Wells, and he was the best in the business. He had worked for Fortune 500 companies, federal agencies, and the occasional billionaire who needed the truth found fast and found clean. Vincent trusted him completely. Carter Wells went to work, and over the next 3 weeks, what he uncovered was so devastating that when he delivered the report to Nia, he told her to sit down first. Finding number 1. Simone Avery was not who she claimed to be. Her consulting firm was a shell company with no real clients, no real revenue, and no real purpose other than to look impressive on a business card. She was $200,000 in personal debt, spread across credit cards, personal loans, and a defaulted car payment. And here was the critical part. She had done this before. Jakari was not her first target. He was her fourth. Simone had a pattern. She found struggling businessmen, men with ambition, but no luck. Men whose egos were bigger than their bank accounts. She seduced them, embedded herself in their lives, extracted whatever money and assets she could, and then moved on to the next one. 3 other men in 3 different states had been left financially devastated by the same woman, and none of them knew about each other. Finding number 2, Lorraine Jennings had been stealing from her own son. For 3 years, she had been siphoning money from Jakari's business through a fake vendor account she had set up under a cousin's name. Small amounts at first, then larger ones, as she got bolder. The total was just over $90,000. This was why Lorraine pushed so hard for the divorce. Not because she hated Nia, although she did, but because Nia was organized. Nia was detail-oriented. Nia kept records, and Lorraine was terrified that eventually Nia would look at the books and find the discrepancies. Finding number 3. Judge Patricia Harmon had a pattern of favorable rulings for people connected to Lorraine's church network. Not just Nia's case. Carter Wells identified 7 other cases with suspicious outcomes, all involving litigants who were members of Greater Hope Baptist, or connected to Lorraine socially. It wasn't proof of bribery. It was something quieter and harder to fight. A web of favors, obligations, and unspoken agreements that had been operating in plain sight for years. Finding number 4. The forged loan document, the one Jakari used to leverage the house, had Simone's fingerprints all over it. Not literally, but digitally. The email trail showed that Simone had sourced a forger, coordinated the fake signature, and guided Jakari through the process. She wanted access to the home equity because she planned to extract it and disappear, just like she had done with the others. Nia sat at Denise's kitchen table, with the investigator's report spread out in front of her. 47 pages of documented truth. She read every word. When she finished, she looked up at Denise, who had been reading over her shoulder. "So you are telling me," Denise said slowly, "that his mama has been robbing him. His girlfriend is a professional con artist. The judge is crooked, and he forged your signature on a federal loan document? That is what the evidence says. Denise sat down heavily. This man did not marry you. He assembled an Avengers team of bad decisions. Nia didn't laugh. She was too focused, because now she had ammunition, and she was going to use every single round, but not wildly, not emotionally, surgically. She called Malcolm and laid it all out. Every finding, every document, every connection. Malcolm listened, took notes, and at the end said, "This changes everything, but we need to be smart about how we deploy it. If we fire everything at once, they will know we have a source and they will try to discredit it. We go in stages." "Then we go in stages," Nia said. "This is something worth remembering, something that applies to far more than courtrooms and divorces. When you are fighting someone who has more power than you, do not fight on their terms. Change the battlefield. You don't need to be louder. You need to be smarter. Document everything. Get organized. And never ever let them know what you know until it is too late for them to fix it." Nia was about to put that principle into practice. Nia started with the school. She gathered every piece of evidence she could find from the parent-teacher conference where the alleged affair photos were taken. Sign-in logs showing 32 attendees. School security footage showing Nia in a crowded gymnasium surrounded by parents and staff. Emails from the principal confirming the event was a standard quarterly conference. A written statement from Mr. Henderson himself, the 60-year-old math teacher in the photos, who was so offended by the implication that he typed a 3-page letter on school letterhead and signed it in blue ink. Nia presented all of it to the school board directly, bypassing the principal who had been pressured by the anonymous complaints. She was calm, organized, and unshakable. She laid out the evidence like a teacher presenting a lesson plan, which, in a way, she was. The board reviewed everything. 2 days later, Nia was reinstated with a formal, written apology. The school also launched an internal investigation into the anonymous emails that had triggered the suspension. Then she moved to the legal front. Malcolm filed a motion to recuse Judge Harmon from the case based on documented conflict of interest. He included the investigators' findings on the 7 suspicious cases, the social connections to Lorraine, and the timeline showing how Nia's motions had been systematically dismissed, while Jakari's filings were fast-tracked. The motion landed like a grenade in a quiet room. Judge Harmon was not immediately removed, but the filing triggered a review by the Judicial Oversight Committee. Within a week, she voluntarily recused herself, claiming, conveniently, that she had a scheduling conflict. A new judge was assigned, Judge Robert Calloway, known for being thorough, fair, and completely immune to backroom politics. Nia allowed herself a breath. She was back at work. She had new legal footing. The corrupt judge was gone. For the first time in months, the ground beneath her feet felt solid. She told Denise, "I think we are going to be okay." She should not have said that. Because while Nia was carefully rebuilding her case, Candace Jennings was carelessly destroying her reputation at a pace that no courtroom victory could match. The original video of Nia being thrown out had continued to spread. What started as a local gossip piece became national entertainment. A major blog reposted it, then another. Then a podcast picked it up. Nia's full name, her school, her neighborhood, everything was out there, dissected by strangers with opinions and Wi-Fi connections. Some people rallied to Nia's defense, but the cruelest voices, as always, were the loudest. And then Simone played her final card, the AI-generated audio recording, the one where Nia's cloned voice laughed about marrying Jakari for money. It hit the internet like a bomb. Within 24 hours, the narrative that Nia was a victim was buried under the narrative that Nia was a fraud. Parents who had supported Nia's reinstatement at the school started getting harassed online for defending her. Some withdrew their support. The school board, under mounting public pressure, began reconsidering her position. Not because she had done anything wrong, but because she had become what administrators fear most, a distraction. Nia sat in her classroom after hours, the lights dim, the desks empty. She looked at the bulletin board she had decorated at the start of the year. It said, "You are capable of amazing things." She had put it up for her second graders, but right now, she needed to read it for herself. Her phone buzzed. A text from Malcolm. "Don't panic, but the opposing counsel has filed a motion to accelerate the trial date. They want this in front of a judge before we have time to present our full evidence package. They're scared. That means we're close." Nia stared at the message. Then she opened the locket. Not to look at the phone number this time, just to look at the photo. Her father's smile, her own baby face, Miss Altha's handwriting. Grandma said, "When the world tries to tell you what you're worth, you tell it right back." She picked up her phone, called Malcolm. "File everything, all of it, now." The courtroom was full, not just with lawyers and parties, but with spectators. Nia's story had gone public in a way nobody planned, and now people wanted to see how it ended. The gallery was packed. A few reporters sat in the back row. Jakari walked in wearing his best suit, the navy one he saved for important meetings. Simone sat beside him, composed, her legs crossed, her face unreadable. Lorraine took her seat behind them, gripping her purse like a shield. Candace sat next to her mother, but something was different. She wasn't filming, she wasn't smiling. She was staring at the table in front of her with the expression of someone who had started to realize they were on the wrong side of history. On the other side, Nia sat beside Malcolm. She wore a simple gray dress, no jewelry except the locket. Her hair was pulled back. She looked calm in the way that deep water looks calm. Still on the surface, powerful underneath. Judge Calloway entered. He was methodical, unhurried, the kind of judge who read every page and asked questions that made unprepared lawyers sweat. Jakari's lawyer went first. He repeated the allegations: emotional abuse, business sabotage, the request for $150,000 in damages. He presented it with conviction, building a picture of Jakari as a hardworking man brought down by a manipulative wife. When he finished, Judge Calloway looked at Malcolm. "Counselor, your response." Malcolm stood. He buttoned his jacket, and then, piece by piece, he dismantled everything. He started with Simone. "Your Honor, the woman sitting beside Mr. Jennings has represented herself throughout this matter as Simone Avery, a business consultant. Her real name is Sharon Mitchell." The courtroom rustled. Jakari's head snapped toward Simone. Her composure cracked for the first time, just a flicker, but it was there. Malcolm continued. He presented the investigators' findings. Simone, or rather Sharon Mitchell, had no legitimate consulting business. Her firm was a shell company. She had outstanding warrants in 2 states for fraud, and Jakari was not her first victim. 3 other men in 3 different cities had been financially destroyed by the same woman using the same playbook. He projected documents on the courtroom screen: business filings, warrant records, bank statements from the shell company. The pattern was undeniable. Jakari stared at Simone. "Is this true?" he whispered. She wouldn't meet his eyes. Judge Calloway studied the evidence. "Continue, counselor." Malcolm moved to the forged loan documents. He presented forensic handwriting analysis showing that Nia's signature on the loan application was fabricated. He showed the email trail connecting Simone to the forgery. He showed the bank records, proving that funds from the loan had been partially redirected to accounts Simone controlled. "This is not merely a divorce issue," Malcolm said. "This is criminal fraud. My client's signature was forged on a financial instrument without her knowledge or consent. Mr. Jennings and Mrs. Mitchell conspired to leverage my client's marital home for personal gain." Jakari's lawyer was scribbling frantically. Jakari's face had gone from confident to ashen. Then Malcolm revealed what nobody in the courtroom was expecting. "Your Honor, I would also like to enter into evidence the following financial records." He presented documentation of Lorraine Jennings' fake vendor account. 3 years of invoices from a company that didn't exist, paid from Jakari's business account, routed to an account controlled by Lorraine through her cousin. The total, $91,412, stolen from her own son. Lorraine, sitting in the gallery, went rigid. Her hands gripped the bench in front of her so hard her knuckles went white. Jakari turned around slowly. He looked at his mother. "Mom?" Lorraine opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Candace stared at her mother. Then she looked at the evidence on the screen, then back at her mother. And then Candace Jennings did the one thing nobody in that courtroom expected. She started crying. Not performative tears, real ones, ugly, shaking, messy ones, because she had just realized that she had been a weapon in her mother's scheme, and she hadn't even known it. Malcolm let the moment breathe. Then he continued, "Finally, Your Honor, regarding the audio recording that has been widely circulated online. The recording in which my client allegedly admits to marrying Mr. Jennings for financial gain." He called a witness, a young man, 20 years old, a former student of Nia's, who was now studying digital forensics at Georgia Tech. He had analyzed the audio at Malcolm's request. His testimony was clear and devastating. The recording was AI-generated. Synthetic voice cloning, using samples taken from Candace Jennings, publicly posted videos of Nia. The forensic markers were unmistakable. The metadata trail led back was to a device registered to Simone Avery. "The recording is fabricated," Malcolm said. "Every word of it. Manufactured by Ms. Mitchell and distributed specifically to destroy my client's reputation and prejudice this case." The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that comes when people realize they have been watching something historic. And then Malcolm played his final card. "Your Honor, one last matter for the record." He paused, looked at Nia. She gave him a small nod. "Throughout these proceedings, opposing counsel has repeatedly characterized my client as a woman who brought nothing to her marriage, who contributed nothing, who had nothing, Mr. Jennings himself stated, and I quote from his deposition, that she was dead weight with no connections, no resources, and no value beyond her teaching salary." Malcolm looked directly at Jakari. "For the record, my client is the biological daughter of Vincent Monroe, founder and chairman of Monroe Holdings International. She has been aware of this her entire adult life. She has never used her family's name, their resources, or their connections. Not once. Not during her marriage, not during these proceedings. She chose to fight this battle with her own strength, her own resources, and her own determination." He turned back to the judge. "We submit this not for financial consideration, but to correct the fundamental lie that has been told about this woman from the beginning. She was never nothing. She chose to be ordinary. And that choice, Your Honor, tells you everything about her character." The courtroom erupted. Whispers, gasps, the sound of every assumption being revised in real time. Jakari's mouth fell open. He stared at Nia like he was seeing her for the first time, and in a way he was. "She's Vincent Monroe's daughter?" he whispered, his voice cracked on the last word. Lorraine grabbed the bench in front of her, Simone went completely white. Judge Calloway waited for the courtroom to settle. Then he spoke. I have reviewed all evidence presented by both parties. I find the counterclaim by Mr. Jennings to be without merit and unsupported by any credible evidence. I find substantial evidence of fraud, forgery, and conspiracy against Mr. Jennings and Mrs. Mitchell. I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. He looked at Nia. Mrs. Carter, the court grants your petition for divorce on your terms. You are awarded full ownership of the marital home, equitable distribution of all marital assets, and a permanent restraining order against Mr. Jennings and all parties involved in the harassment documented in these proceedings. He looked at Jakari. Mr. Jennings, I strongly suggest you retain criminal defense counsel. You are going to need it. The gavel came down. Here is what happened after. Jakari Jennings lost his business within 30 days. When the fraud charges went public, every remaining client pulled out. The banks called in their loans. The house, the one he had thrown Nia out of, the one he claimed was his, went back to Nia as part of the settlement. She didn't keep it. She sold it. Used the money to pay off Malcolm's legal fees, make a donation to the school's after program, and put the rest into a savings account she would never need to touch, but wanted to know was there. Because security is not about money. It is about knowing you built something that cannot be taken away. Jakari ended up in a one-bedroom apartment across town, working a warehouse job that barely covered rent. At night, alone in that apartment, he would scroll through old photos on his phone. Pictures of him and Nia at their wedding. Christmas mornings, a Sunday in the park where she had laughed so hard she snorted, and he had looked at her like she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. He tried to reach her, called from different numbers, sent letters, showed up at places he thought she might be. Every attempt was met with silence. He wrote a long letter of apology, 12 pages. He poured everything into it, the regret, the shame, the slow, terrible understanding of what he had destroyed. Nia never read it. Some doors close so hard, the walls shake, and doors that close that hard don't open again. Simone Avery, or rather Sharon Mitchell, was arrested 3 weeks after the trial. The warrant from the other states caught up with her. The 3 other men she had defrauded came forward after the story went public. They had been too ashamed to report it before. Now, with Nia's case making headlines, they found the courage to speak. Sharon Mitchell faced multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy across 3 states. Her bail was set at $250,000. She couldn't make it. The woman who had walked into Nia's living room in a red dress, drinking from Nia's cups, and sleeping with Nia's husband, now sat in a holding cell in an orange jumpsuit, waiting for a public defender. Lorraine Jennings faced her own reckoning, though hers was less dramatic and, in some ways, more painful. The evidence of her embezzlement became public during the trial. Her church, Greater Hope Baptist, the place where she had sat in the front pew for 22 years, the place where she wielded power over bake sales and building committees and other people's reputations, turned on her completely. They had seen Candace's original video. They had heard the story. And they wanted nothing to do with a woman who stole from her own son and celebrated while a young woman was thrown into the rain. Lorraine was removed from the elder board. Her friends stopped calling. Her Sunday routine, the one that gave her life structure and meaning and the illusion of moral authority, was gone. She ended up alone in her house, the same house where she had once held court, making pronouncements about who was worthy and who was not. Now nobody came to visit. The silence she had weaponized against Nia had come back to live with her permanently, And then there was Candace. This was the part of the story nobody expected. 2 weeks after the trial, Candace posted a video, not the kind she used to post, not the mocking, cruel, look at me content that had defined her online presence. This video was just her, sitting in her car, no filter, no ring light, her eyes red and swollen. She talked for 9 minutes. She talked about what she had done to Nia, how she had filmed her at her lowest moment and laughed about it, how she had helped her mother and Simone tear apart a woman who had never done a single thing to hurt her, how she had wanted attention so badly that she was willing to destroy someone else to get it. I was wrong, she said into the camera. I knew I was wrong while I was doing it, and I did it anyway because being cruel made me feel powerful. And that is the saddest thing I have ever had to say out loud. She sent Nia a message afterward, simple and short. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know that I know what I did, and I am sorry. Nia read it. She didn't respond, but she didn't block her either. And in the complicated math of human relationships, that was something. Candace lost her job. The original video she posted had been flagged for online harassment, and her employers, a marketing firm that valued its public image, let her go. Her social media accounts were suspended. The followers who had cheered her cruelty unfollowed when cruelty stopped being entertaining. She got a new job, a quiet one, at a nonprofit that helped victims of domestic abuse. She answered phones and filed paperwork and made coffee for people who were going through the worst days of their lives. She didn't post about it. She didn't need the world to see her trying to be better. She just needed to be better. Denise Washington, because this story needs at least one character who got exactly what they deserved in the best way, got promoted at work, head of student support services. She celebrated by buying herself a new car, a sensible Honda with good gas mileage, and a bumper sticker that read, I survived my best friend's divorce, and all I got was this emotional damage. When Nia thanked her for everything, for the guest room, and the breakfasts, and the late-night conversations, and the unwavering, relentless, sometimes exhausting loyalty, Denise waved her hand. Girl, please. This is the most exciting thing that has happened to me since I found out Target has a secret clearance section in the back. You are welcome. Now here's the part of the story that matters most. 6 months after the trial, on a Saturday afternoon in October, Nia Carter sat on the porch of a house in a small Georgia town. Not her father's estate, not a mansion, not a penthouse with a view of the city. The house Miss Altha left her, the one with the wraparound porch and the garden and the creaky screen door and the view of pine trees and red clay roads stretching out toward the horizon. She had renovated it. New paint, soft yellow, Miss Altha's favorite color, new garden beds with tomatoes and collard greens and marigolds, same porch, same rocking chair, same feeling of being exactly where you are supposed to be. She looked different now, not because of money or clothes or anything you could buy. She looked like a woman who had walked through fire and come out the other side, still standing. Her hair was longer, her shoulders were straighter, and the weight she had been carrying for 5 years, the weight of a marriage that demanded she shrink, of a family that demanded she disappear, of a world that tried to tell her she was nothing, that weight was gone. Vincent came to visit. He drove down from the city, just him. No security, no convoy. He parked in the gravel driveway and walked up the porch steps and sat in the rocking chair next to Nia's, and she handed him a glass of sweet tea like it was the most natural thing in the world. Their relationship was real now. Not perfect. They were still learning each other, still filling in the gaps that 28 years of distance had created. But they were trying. And trying, when it is honest, counts for more than people think. You could have called me from the beginning, Vincent said, looking out at the trees. I know. I could have ended it in a day. I know that too, but I needed to know I could do it without you first. Vincent was quiet for a moment. And now? Nia looked at him. Now I know, and now I want you here, not because I need you to save me, because I want my dad. Vincent's eyes filled. He nodded slowly and didn't try to hide it. They sat in silence for a while. The kind of comfortable silence that only comes when you are exactly where you belong. Nia held the locket, opened it one more time, the faded photo of baby Nia and young Vincent, Miss Altha's handwriting, the phone number that had waited all those years for Nia to be ready. She closed the locket and smiled. Later that evening, after Vincent had gone to bed in the guest room, Nia went inside to sort through the day's mail. Bills, a card from Denise with a gift card to Target tucked inside, junk mail for a credit card she would never need. And then, at the bottom of the stack, an envelope, handwritten. No return address, old paper, slightly yellowed at the edges, like it had been stored somewhere for a long time before someone decided to send it. She opened it carefully. Inside was a single photograph, black and white, faded with age. It showed a young woman standing in front of a small building. The woman was smiling, wearing a cotton dress and work boots, her hands on her hips, looking directly at the camera with an expression of absolute certainty. The sign on the building read, Monroe and Associates, founded 1962. The young woman was Miss Altha. Nia stared at the photo. Her breath caught. She turned it over. On the back, in handwriting she did not recognize, someone had written, Altha Carter, founding partner, $500 investment, built the foundation. Miss Altha was not just Vincent's mother-in-law. She was his first business partner, the woman who had given a young man with a dream and empty pockets the $500 that started everything. The woman who never told anyone, who never asked for credit, who sat on this very porch and taught her granddaughter that wealth was not about money, while knowing, the whole time, that she had helped build an empire. The nothing that Lorraine mocked, the simple life, the small town, the cornbread, and the prayers, and the garden full of collard greens. That was the foundation. That was where the Monroe billions began. On this porch, with that woman, with $500 and faith. Nia held the photo against her chest and cried. Not sad tears, not angry tears. The kind of tears that come when you finally understand something that was always true, but you couldn't see until right now. The whole time, they said she came from nothing. She came from everything. And here's the last thing. The thing that matters more than the courtroom and the money and the revenge and all the rest of it. Nia didn't win because her father was rich. She won because she refused to let anyone else define her worth. The money didn't save her. The name didn't save her. She saved herself, with patience and evidence and the help of people who loved her, and the quiet, stubborn refusal to give up even when giving up would have been easier. Your worth was never about what you have in your bank account or whose last name you carry. It is about what was poured into you by every grandmother who prayed over your bed at night, by every teacher who believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself, by every quiet woman who built something the world refused to see. You are not nothing. You never were. And anyone who makes you feel that way, that tells you everything about them and nothing about you. If this story hit your soul, do me a favor and smash that like button. Subscribe for more stories like this. And drop a comment. Tell me, would you have called Vincent sooner, or did Nia do the right thing fighting her own battle first? And remember, some people will only realize your value after you are gone, but by then, you will be too far ahead to look back. Karma always keeps receipts. I will see you in the next one. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with real-life lessons. Every character, every twist, and every word was crafted with one purpose: to remind you of your worth and inspire you to never let anyone define it for you. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.